Okay, I hope you were enjoying that. And we're just getting some things set up here in the studio. Sorry about my background, and I'm just getting a lot of things together. I changed everything substantially. What you're seeing on the walls there are the old Airstream material that is exactly like you would have seen if you were flying about in an airplane of about this vintage, because really Airstreams are made in a similar way. And so I'm just trying out some new things, including the software that I'm using. I wanted to talk a little bit about what happened yesterday with Trump, in the in case anybody hasn't talked to you about it already. Jim Acosta. Look at me, I'm Jim Acosta. It's a great name. I love how names sometimes just really fit the person. He does accost people. And, it's just interesting because I consider myself to be a journalist. And one of the things you're taught early on in when you become a journalist is that you're not really supposed to be weighing in on the situation. You're not really necessarily, your opinion isn't really being asked for unless you're an editor or somebody who's been asked to be a contributor. We live in a whole different world. So if you're under 30, 40, whatever it is, you're probably not familiar with that old way of delivering the news. You ask the tough questions, and you're not really there for any one person or political party. In fact, the idea is that you're unbiased. And you're not asking leading questions necessarily. You're asking questions that are going to get an answer, that are going to be helpful for the audience. And so I guess I'm trying to do that a little bit here. But I was just looking through some of the old footage from there's a couple of different things that I was looking at, but this one was Obama in particular. And I just think it's amazing how short people's memories are when it comes to the way that a president deals with situations. If they've got somebody that's being particularly difficult, they have the right, as Obama says, to kick them out of their house. So I'm just going to play this for you, and you can have a listen, just to refresh our memories. Hopefully it's going to play. I have to say that I'm using some new software here, so let's see if that's going to play. Be a drag if it didn't, but what I can do, I can go and do it a different way. Let's see if this is going to work. Let's see how that works. Not quite working in the way that I thought, but I'm using, as I said, actually this is a bit of an experiment, just trying a new type of software, because I'm going to be doing some live gigs. Actually, there's one tomorrow night that I'm going to be doing, and I just wanted to see if I could get things going, and and of course it worked when I was trying it before. It doesn't work now, but let me just, anyway, what I'll do is I will put in the actual, I'm sure that you guys have already seen this anyway. You've probably seen what Obama was doing as far as kicking people out. But I think what I'll do is I'll probably put things together and use the other software that I'm used to, and see if, let's see if we can, okay, the sound is on. Let's see if we can transition into that and have it actually work. My apologies, you guys. I'm just, as I said, I'm just trying a couple of things before I go out and do some live reporting. I'm going to be covering a gig tomorrow night, and it's going to be a CD release, and so it's a little bit of a different theme, but yeah. Okay, so that's definitely not wanting to work, which is interesting. I want to monitor the audio, noise pressure. Okay, so I'm gonna have to try that when I'm not on air, because apparently it works just fine when we are off air, and then when we are on air. Oh, let me just see. Let me see. I think I might have the solution here. Let's try this. It's telling me that I can actually play this. Anyway, so another thing that I wanted to bring up is the project that I'm going to be doing coming up very soon. I've got going to be doing some changes to the fifth wheel that I'm going to be getting. That I'm actually going to be converting, and it's kind of like a tiny house, only it's a little bit easier to manage because it's already basically there. But I'm going to be bringing up some photographs, and I'm going to be doing some videos of, whether it's live stream, I don't know. I probably will produce the videos. I'm going to be doing some just going through some of the different projects that are going to happen. And one of the things I'm going to be doing is a rocket stove, in case any of you have ever heard of a rocket stove. I'm really interested. I'm trying to make it as off-grid as possible. So some of you may know about the Airstream Studio that I'm in, that I can actually work with basically just electricity right now and an internet connection. And one of the things that I've been looking at is adding solar to the solar panels to the outside. Right now what happens is you have to collect all of the solar energy. It goes into a bank of batteries, and I've had somebody look at it, and they said it would probably take about 10 batteries to be able to do a whole concert if I was off grid. So that's a kind of an investment, but it should be really interesting, because I don't think anybody's ever done an off-grid concert, actually recording it. and doing the interviews and that sort of thing. I've got a little stage here, and I'm going to be having some of the artists that are performing at the various festivals coming in, doing a performance for my audience here, and also for the TV and radio shows that I do, and then also have some interviews at the desk here. So I've got the desk, and that's all set up now, and I've got the stage, and I was playing my slide guitar last night, just sort of trying that out, and I've got pretty much everything together, just trying out my cameras today as well. So, you know, a lot of these things have been kind of sitting and waiting for me to get back into doing my thing here. I used to do a TV show, and one of the things that I was going to be doing was taking some of the ideas that I had in the in-studio version and then going out to the festivals and going to the live events. And so tomorrow I'm starting not to do a live feed, but I'm going to be doing some interviews and that sort of thing with the musicians at the CD release, and then I will be bringing it to you, and hopefully we'll have some pretty good music. I think the thing is that for some of these events I won't be actually having the same kind of mix as I would be if I was able to set everything up from scratch. So for those of you that are audiophiles, I use an audio snake, and it has a splitter, and so part of it goes into the venue, and then I'm able to actually plug in all the different instruments right into that snake. It's a 24 channel. I don't usually use all of the channels. And then so the sound person can actually take a feed from that snake into the live board, and then I take a feed that's going to go to you guys to stream, whether it's on here or whether it's on the radio. So a few years ago, I really love the idea of live streaming from a particular venue, especially on the radio, because you know it's a challenge to get a proper mix for the radio. And so one of the things that if you've ever done any live sound reinforcement, you'll know that it can be really difficult to figure out who's gonna how the mix is gonna the mix down is gonna work for the recording environment as compared to for the live environment, because it's a whole different thing. So one of the things that was happening at that time was that there were a lot of DJs that were performing, and it was super loud in the room, and so I would be there sort of trying to figure out the proper mix, and then at about 2 a.m. I would leave when everything was kind of still, you know, going, but I just would go home at that point and leave somebody else in charge. And you could get in the car and you can hear it on the radio, and I just really love that that feeling of accomplishment that we've gotten the proper mix. I guess that was about 5 years ago, so things have certainly changed as far as the live streaming environment. I live stream my radio show from various locations. Like usually it's from my place that's on an island, and I'm able to not have to go into the studio to be able to do my show, so that's a really great advantage. And so I'm just taking it to whatever levels I can, and in a lot of ways it's kind of like an old-fashioned way of doing things, because it used to be that the radio stations would have on site reporters, and they would actually do all of their interviews and their live feeds right from that area, and they did it I guess they do it by satellites now still, of course, but in those days it's pretty amazing when you think about the technology that they had and how limited they were, that they were able to get these live feeds. Like the guy that was covering the Hindenburg was actually doing it live, and that was what, early 30s, I believe. And you can hear him, you know, there's no delay. I mean, he's doing it right in times in the exact time frame that you're listening to it. So that's what freaked people out about it, was that they thought that the Hindenburg was going to land and everything was going to be copacetic, and then it burst into flames, and we hear the report as it's happening. So there's something about that, not when it's a tragedy, but when, say, if you're at a live event, or if you're actually, well, particularly at a festival, I love to get that live vibe. And so I'm not really here to record it perfectly. I just want to get that sort of sense of being live. And the other thing I really enjoy is just getting musicians who don't usually perform together and having them just, sort of throwing them into a situation where they're playing together, which they're usually able to do in an incredibly cohesive way, and also to ask them about their process and how they come up with their musical influences and how they come up with their songs and that sort of thing. So that's something that I've always really enjoyed, because when I was growing up, you had to actually be in the same room with musicians. You couldn't just hand out an MP3. And I think what's happened is, even if the ability to record ourselves has gotten better, that idea of getting together and just jamming live with other musicians is kind of gone by the wayside. So those are a couple of things. The radio show that I do has always focused on the story behind the people making a difference in the world. So now that things are getting a little bit more established, and I don't really need to focus so much on the the political situation. I think there are a lot of people that are covering that. I do see things that I find interesting and that I want to comment on, but I'm more, I guess I get bored with the whole thing, and I understand that we need to be really focused, and as people who understand that the mainstream media is not giving us the whole story, I think it's really important that we also see why it is that we're doing what we're doing. And one of the reasons that I'm doing what I'm doing is so that I can actually highlight people who are creative and people who are making a difference in the world and people who are doing things. So it kind of it morphed into, of course, talking to people like Julia Davis and Andreas Kalker and Carrie Rivera and Ole Johansson, all these people who are making an incredible difference in the world because of the work that they're doing to reveal some, and Dr. Judy Wood, of course, all these people who are making a huge difference in the world because they are willing to step forward, and as whistleblowers, they're actually just bringing out things that we never would have found out about before. And I think that's incredibly important, and I intend to carry on doing that. I'm more interested in having the people who are either in the studio or that I can get interviews with overseas who are doing a one-on-one, so that they can actually answer questions for people in the audience as well. So I'm getting back into that now that I have a little bit more permanent situation, and now that the studio is actually going a little bit more smoothly. So I apologize, I guess, as I do probably unnecessarily, but I think it's important to let people know what sort of what happened after Tom died and all the different things that took place, not because of my own personal situation, but because I was sort of I was going in a certain direction with the radio show and with the TV show, which I had to give up because I just couldn't, it just wasn't manageable with the way things were going. But I'm getting back into that. And I'm really glad, I'm really thankful for the people that have stuck, I don't know what word I'm trying to come up with, have stayed with me. And I think one of the payoffs, I think, is for anybody that's interested in seeing how somebody can manage through all these different things, and also how they can live off grid. I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. Not that I do live off grid, but I want to make it so that the fifth wheel that I'm getting, that I'm working toward purchasing, it's not that expensive, and it is actually it does need some repairs, but it's getting kind of cold, and I would really like to be able to be in that soon. And unless things change, it's not going to happen till December, actually probably more like Christmas. I'm hoping that I can do it ahead of before that, but I want to show people the process. So once I have it, I'll be doing some of the renovations, because it's an old school RV, but it's 35 feet long, and it's got some stuff happening with the back of it, and I still have to figure out what it is. It's totally dry right now, but there was a little bit of a problem with the leak in the back. So it's the walls are torn out in the very, very back. And it's going to be very interesting to see what is going on and what the problem is with that leak. And so that once I do that, once I get that all together, I've discovered this amazing product. And it's not a product that you buy, it's something that you make. And so it's basically taking concrete and adding foam to it so you can aerate it, and making it lightweight. And I think that's going to be pretty revolutionary for people that are trying to do projects in their RVs, because you want to keep it lightweight. And also the idea is that you can actually move this thing from place to place. So I'm going to try and put in a rocket stove. So I just gave the plans to my brilliant brother, and I'm really hoping that he might be interested in helping out on the channel, because he's fantastic. He's been in the renovation business for decades, and when I was raising a house, there he was, Johnny on the spot, and he was able to help with that. I mean, I've done a lot of renovation projects, so this one I really like, because I'm actually going to be able to, instead of moving away from it, it's going to actually be able to follow me where I go. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works with the Airstream as well. I'll have an entourage, I'll have a couple of people, but having a place to work out of, and then having a place to live out of, and also to have my workshops, because I teach filmmaking as well, and I'm going to be going back into that. And that's also something that I'm going to be doing on the channel, is showing people basically how that all works, because I've been doing that for since about 1996. I started off doing theater workshops, and then getting into filmmaking. And I have it's a character-driven, that's where the name comes from. It's a character-driven way of teaching. And so my grandfather was actually a filmmaker in Hollywood, and he started off in England with British Pathé. So I come by it naturally, and I'd really like to get back into it. I used to have a photography studio. I'm also a writer. I'm writing a book, and so there's a whole bunch of projects that are going on. So I thought, rather than focusing too much on the political arena, I would probably get more back into the stuff that I'm doing, because apparently some people have found it interesting, and that includes some of the interviews that I'll be doing with people who are making a difference in the world. And so I really hope that you will be able to join me. I will be doing I'm hoping to have Dr. Judy back on when things settle out in her life, and when they settle out in my life, so that we can do that again. For those of you that were listening to the PSYOP recovery program, I think that is actually something that is really very cool, that people can actually have a chance to talk in real time with people like Dr. Judy, and have their questions answered. So even if she's not able to join us, I'm going to be having some times when we just talk about where did the towers go, about the book, and be able to answer some of your questions, because I feel that between all of us, we can certainly help others come along in the journey, and understand how some of those things intersect with the things that we're seeing now. And I think more and more we're going to be able to see the tie-in between the actors who were involved in 9/11 and before. I think that's why I got really interested in George Webb's work, and I rather than replaying what he's doing here, I think it's really a great place to bring in other the work of other people too, and to see how all of those things intersect, and to really practice our critical thinking skills. And part of that is to compare things like what was happening with one politician over another politician, if we can call them politicians, because we can see how the deep state is buoying up one narrative and trying to tear down another one. And I think the contrast between Obama and Trump is just such a graphic way of seeing that. So rather than seeing it as politics, or trying to deconstruct that in a political way. I think it's just interesting to see it from the point of view of Dr. Judy's work, and to try to help people in the PSYOP recovery program to help them to understand that there is something happening. Call it what you will. Call it. I like the way she calls these guys the crew, and whoever they are. We don't need to have a name for them. We don't need to have a name overall, but we can see the individual actors. We can see the individuals who are involved in creating the narrative. And a lot of that comes through the media. And that can even come through the alternative media as well. I think that's being infiltrated more and more. And and then the other thing too is how, how social media is so much part of that. And take a look at Tucker Carlson and what happened to him last night, to his family, and the fact that they Twitter was able to advertise. Basically, it was a conduit for advertising the address and of he and. What was it? Daily Caller. I can't remember. So Tucker Carlson and I think Sean Hannity, various people's addresses, so that people can go over and intimidate and harass them and their families. I mean, that's a pretty scary thing. And I think that it's something that we need to be really aware of, that this is what's happening in our world and why it's happening. Why is this happening to people who have the unmitigated gall to actually speak out and to talk about to their particular perspective, and that people will come along and lie about what that perspective is, and it's so essential that those that want to dispel the lie encourage each other to do the critical thinking. And that goes back to where do the towers go, and looking at the evidence and letting it go where you want to. If you've ever seen an interview with Tucker Carlson, I get that there are people that may not like the perspective, that he doesn't see us all as some sort of melting pot, and he's coming up against the narrative, and you see what happens, these mobs that are attacking him, and you can only imagine what would have happened if there had been a red wave. So I'm thankful in a lot of ways that things went as they did with the election. So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I was just trying out some new software, and so I'm going to go back to the drawing board. Sometimes you can only test it on air, so I apologize for the beginning. And I think what I'll do is I'll just let you enjoy a little bit more relaxing music while I do a couple of other things on the air. And thank you very much for tuning in, and come back. We're going to be having some really cool new things happening and some cool people coming on the air, and I think you're going to be really surprised at what comes up in the future. So subscribe and let people know that we're going to, take a look at some of the interviews that I've been doing over the past number of years, and see what you have to look forward to in the future.